Hey guys, and welcome back to DeeperThanMost. I'm your host DJ.
And I'm your host Sav.
So today we are looking at the 6th installment of our FNC series, and we're in Colorado this time.
Yes, and since it's Colorado, I'm sure you guys can probably guess what the case is. It's a very notorious case, and it's JonBenét Ramsey. And we're also doing a mukbang today. Mukbang.
I have my burrito. It's a veg burrito filled with beans, rice, guac, and sour cream.
And I have nachos. And it's like spicy Brazilian pork or beef or something. And there's guacamole, pico de gallo, sour cream, and I also added like salsa and cheese. So that is what we've got going on today. And what's the restaurant?
It is Santa Fe something. But in terms of this case, I don't know, man. Every time I get into this case, it kind of gets me because it's like, why? There's like nobody know nothing, you know?
Yeah, and when it comes down to this case, the police work isn't the best, which happens in a lot of cases. But also...
every single fucking one of them, almost.
Yeah, but also... there's just a lot of questions when it comes down to this case, and the whole thing is just bizarre. But it's a widely known case. It's covered all the time, so we might not get as deep as you guys might want us to get with this episode. But just like Zodiac Killer, it's just one of those
where we're just
cases where, talk about some theories on what could have really happened to JonBenét.
Yep. But before we do any of that, we must get into our intro topic for today. We don't have too many today because we couldn't find anything that was...
just one?
Yeah, it's just one today.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on.
Yeah. But this one caught my eye. It says Oregon considers vaccine passport requirement. And before I even get into it, like, what do you think about that?
I just want to start off by saying I knew this was going to happen. I forgot what episode I said it in. I feel like it was probably episode 5, the Hollow Earth Theory, where I literally said they're going to make it to where you're required to get a vaccine some way, somehow, whether it be through travel or I feel like the next step would be in order to go to school or work, you have to get a vaccine. Right. So I already knew this was going to happen. I mean, like, it makes sense. Like, just in order to keep control, like, what else would you do?
Right.
I mean, if they say, it goes, you know?
Right, because what can you really do about it?
Yeah.
What are you going to not go to work because you don't have, you know what I'm saying? Then you're not making money. Then you can't feed yourself or your family. So then you're in a really tough spot at that point.
They give you an ultimatum.
So it says the Oregon Health Authority, or the OHA, appears to be moving toward requiring vaccine passports for anyone who wants to take their mask off inside a business that will allow it.
Oh.
And that in its own is still kind of weird because it's like, okay, boom. So a business allows for your mask to come off, but in order to even take your mask off, you have to show them proof. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, so it's like a vaccine card.
Yeah.
Okay, see, I thought it was like, you know, you put it in your passport in order to travel.
I mean, that may also be a thing that they end up implementing.
But if they're going this far, then yes, definitely. I'm sure it's going to continue to,
for sure,
you know, spread.
Right. Oregon Governor Kate Brown said that the state would follow CDC guidelines, which came out last Thursday. And those guidelines said fully vaccinated people do not need to wear a mask inside or outside in most places. And I mean, I get it. Yeah, they don't need to, but...
who got the hookup on a fake vaccine card? Let me know.
Right.
Comment down below.
We don't condone illegal activities.
Yeah, it was a joke. We're going to go ahead and roll into this case. So, just a little backstory of the day. In the early morning hours of December 26, 1996, John and Patsy Ramsey awoke to find their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét Ramsey, missing from her bed at their home in Boulder, Colorado. And yeah, this was like right after Christmas. So, like, still had Christmas decorations up, like that
still
type of deal.
Snow on the ground.
Yes. So, it was just so odd to have seen her the night before.
Right. All
and then for her to
not.
Yeah, and then for her to not be there in the morning. It's just what happened in that time.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of what happened, Patsy and John woke up early that morning to prepare for a trip that they had planned. They were on their way to wake their kids up when Patsy found a ransom note on their stairs demanding $118,000 in exchange for JonBenét's safe return.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody knows, but this ransom note is very odd because that year, John was supposed to be getting a bonus check from his job.
Exactly. That
was literally the same exact amount, like down to the penny of the amount that was being requested on the ransom note. So this raised a lot of eyebrows and caused a lot of speculation within this case. So keep that in mind. Yeah.
And the note specifically warned not to involve the police, but Patsy, ignoring that warning, she called them immediately. She called friends and family as well to aid in the search for the young pageant star.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And JonBenét was a beauty pageant star.
Right. And I know
she had lots of fans. And
if you guys have seen like those shows,
Toddlers and Tiaras, or Dance Moms, even just shows that highlight young girls or little kids as being older and more promiscuous than what they should be, because that's really what it is. Like they typically have them dressing up very old. I don't want to say old, but very mature.
Yeah, it's a very mature setting for a kid.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I can only imagine what that can do to your self-esteem, like, as a kid.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely.
Knowing that, like, I have to be the prettiest, I have to be the cutest and the nicest.
Definitely fuck you up.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's where that's why a lot of people, like, even most models, they started out in pageants, and then they develop, like, eating disorders or personality disorders because of stuff like that.
Yeah, that shit really fucks you up.
Yeah. And it says the police arrived around 5:55 a.m. They said there were no signs of forced entry, but there's still so much more that is into this case besides that,
Yes. And not only were the police there, but neighbors were there. Like you said, friends and family. Literally everybody in the world was in their house. Literally. And that's not good, obviously, for a crime scene. You don't... Because the whole house is a crime scene. You don't know where she is. She's missing. So...
And they're
just the first fuck up.
Right. I even
of many.
I even mentioned a couple of things. And I call them inconsistencies. So before the overall search began, JonBenét's room was cornered off, but the family and friends went around the house picking up things, which, like you just said,
trying to clean up the house.
Yeah,
contaminating.
Nobody should be touching anything.
Exactly. They're just contaminating all the evidence, really making everything useless.
Right. At that point, the whole case is gone because
you would think that they would know. You would think that they would know. Okay, we need to make sure that nobody touches anything because we need to find our daughter.
Exactly.
Period. Point blank. It's common sense.
Nobody should even be in the house.
Yes, and I understand, in that moment, you are probably panicked. You're you're not in your right state of mind.
Right.
And you're just...
But everyone...
going off of, oh my God, you're just freaking out. So...
Right, definitely. No, I get that. But at the same time, everybody's dealt with the police before. Everybody knows that, when there's a scene or somewhere, that it should be taped off. And that's the first... Well, that's, the second inconsistency there. The Boulder Police Department also shared their evidence that they found, not only with the Ramseys, but, with
the public too soon.
Yeah, it was just too much too soon. So, that being said...
And... It's funny because going into our theories in a second, well, not in a second, but in a little bit, a couple of the theories involve the parents. But if the Boulder Police Department was including, which I understand, as a parent, you want to be included, but if they had them as a suspect, why would they be telling them about the evidence that they're finding? That just doesn't make sense to me. When do you ever hear about that? When do you ever hear about the cops telling a suspect, well, we found this, we found that?
Think about how that could set things up.
Because then that lets them know, okay, now I know what I need to be more careful about. They're catching up, they're catching on to me.
Exactly. At 1 p.m. that day, the detectives instructed Mr. Ramsey and a family friend to go around the house to see if anything was amiss. So that was another mistake.
To see if it was a robbery and somebody just took her.
Right.
But nothing was stolen. So.
Nothing at all.
Yeah.
There's another mistake, though, because why have them do it? Why couldn't you guys do it?
Why weren't they doing it? And why wasn't anything taped off?
Right. There was nothing
And there was snow on the ground.
Exactly.
That's a key point. There was snow on the ground. It was December, right after Christmas. It was winter, so just crazy.
It gets even weirder because the first place that they ended up searching was the basement, where John immediately picked up, little JonBenét's body and brought her upstairs, which is a huge no because, like,
you don't do that.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
and you should know that you don't.
Right, and unfortunately, that destroyed any potential evidence that could have been found at the crime scene at the time.
Yeah, and more than likely, the basement was the crime scene.
Yeah, it definitely was.
More into the crime scene and her cause of death. JonBenét's mouth had been covered in duct tape, and her wrist and neck were wrapped with a white cord. Her torso had been covered in a white blanket as well. There was no conclusive evidence of sexual assault, as no semen was found on the body at the scene, and her genitalia had been wiped clean, although a sexual assault had occurred. So at the scene, they didn't know that she had been sexually assaulted, but upon her autopsy report, that's when they found out. And the reason why they initially thought that wasn't the case is because there was no semen found at the scene.
Right.
It was more internal. That's how they were able to tell. Especially because somebody tried to clean it up.
Right.
So, the makeshift garrote was made. What's a garrote?
It's like a
cord, like a
yeah,
noose?
it's like a choke. It's like
Okay, so the makeshift garrote, aka like a noose, was made using a length of cord and a part of a paintbrush from the basement. And the cord was from the basement too, right?
I believe so, yeah.
So all of the weapons that were used were found in the home.
That's a very interesting point.
Yes.
We'll get into
and
that,
they were
why
left
it's
there.
So interesting later, yeah.
Yeah, so the coroner also found what was believed to be pineapple in JonBenét's stomach. And this is because JonBenét and her brother really, really loved pineapple. Their parents would give them pineapple like at night just because they loved to eat it. They would have it all the time. Yes, late night snack. And that previous night, she had pineapple that night. So it was still fresh in her stomach. Yeah. And if it was right before they went to bed, because they had came back home from a party or like a Christmas party.
I think they were at one of their family friends' houses at that.
Yes, and they had came home like later that night. I don't know what time. Yeah. But it was later in the evening, and they still gave her pineapple before bed. So it was still in her digestive system. Like, it was still in her stomach.
Right. To
where it hadn't settled yet. So it was fresh. Like, she probably died right after. Her parents did not remember giving her any. A bowl was found in the kitchen with 9-year-old brother Burke's fingerprints on it.
And I mean, yeah, fingerprints don't necessarily equal like time, but like that little detail in itself is like, well, hey,
something to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Especially because, well, I don't know. Because at the same time, like, he lives there too.
Yeah. And
so if he wanted some pineapple, he could have just had some.
Right.
It was also determined that her cause of death was by asphyxiation due to strangulation. She also had a skull fracture, and where was that? Like at the base of her skull?
Yeah, I think it was like at the base of her skull, kind of like in the back, probably.
And this was from blunt force.
Yeah. Which also is important because later on, there's, we get into that.
Right.
So now we get into the interviews that came up over the years. The first one is of John and Patsy Ramsey on January 1st, 1997. 1 week after JonBenét was murdered, John and Patsy gave their first interview, which aired on CNN. Correspondent Brian Cabell was the one that conducted that interview. A major question he asked is, why did you decide you wanted to talk now? And the Ramseys responded in an awkward way, saying they wanted to thank those that were supporting them. They wanted to let their supporters know that they were healing. John Ramsey then added they wanted to find out why this happened. And for me, this is a pretty odd way to answer that question.
It is, but also you got to keep in mind, the Ramseys are awkward in every interview they do.
Definitely. And that goes for all of them, too.
And it's like, they're so, I hate to say this, but they seem emotionless.
Yeah, it's very stoic when they're in interviews.
So, I don't know. It's just weird. Their vibes are very weird.
The reason I found that answer so awkward is because the daughter was just murdered like a week before, and they failed to mention actually finding the killer or even mentioning the killer at all, right?
Right. And the fact that they're already healing a week later.
Right. So it's like they wanted to thank people that were being concerned, but they weren't concerned about the person that may have like killed their daughter, you know?
So, in May in 1997, John and Patsy do another interview. On May 1st, 1997, the Ramseys give another interview. Key question in the interview was, Mr. Ramsey, what do you want to say to the killer of your daughter? So John and Patsy both responded, and John's response simply said, we will find you, and it is my sole mission for the rest of my life. And Patsy reluctantly agrees and says the same thing. So, I mean, could be scripted.
Could be.
Might not be. The world may never know, because, I mean, nobody's really officially, like, confidently been charged
right
in this murder. So the reason why this is awkward, it is theorized that the Ramseys know who killed JonBenét, so they don't want to reveal the person or want them to go to jail, because they did not request the person to turn themselves in. Instead, they chose to make it their sole mission for the rest of their lives. And I know you're about to get into this, but the theory that it was Burke really makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh, no, yeah, no, definitely. I would say the same thing.
It makes a lot of sense to me, especially with the parents wanting to protect whoever the killer was. Mm-hmm. Who else would you want to protect besides your only other child, your kid, son?
Yeah. It's a very eerie situation.
It is, and especially if it was maybe even an accident.
Right. I mean, even if it was an accident, you could have even came out and, like, you know.
Now, the whole sexual assault thing.
Yeah, no, that part.
That's a little different.
But in terms of, like, you know, possibly, you know, accidentally shoving her down or, like, you know, shit like that. So, speaking of Burke, we actually get into his interview, which came 20 years after JonBenét's death. So, at this point, he's 29 years old, and he agreed to do an interview with Dr. Phil. And this interview was a 3-part interview aired on Phil's show from September 12th. 13th and the 19th of 2016.
I've seen clips of this interview.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you remember how you mentioned the family being so stoic. Well, in his interviews, he just looks so smug about everything. Like,
yeah.
So the major part from part 1 is a question that Dr. Phil asked him. He says, do you remember the last time you saw your sister JonBenét alive? And to which Burke answered within, I want to say in the car on the way back from the Whites, which is that friend that I talked about earlier about how they were coming home, you know?
The Christmas party.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying the last time he saw his sister was in the back, or was in the car?
Right.
Not so when they were in the house?
Between all that time.
Right.
Know? So how you not remember
not brushing your teeth to go to bed?
Right.
Like, I don't know.
See?
It's weird.
And then, so in the second part of this interview, Dr. Phil goes, the second part, the second night, he goes, he shows him the ransom note, and he asks if it looks like his mother's handwriting, and he asks him about his little voice on the 911 call, because if you know, it can be heard that he was saying, did they find anything or anything, like, on the call.
We should play that 911 call. We're going to go ahead and play the 911 call really quick, just so you can kind of get a gist of what we're talking about.
Police. What's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old. She's blonde. 6 years old. How long ago was this? I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's gone. Does it say who took her? What? Does it say who took her? I don't know. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? It says SBTC. Victory. Please. Okay, what's your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out and she's right here. Oh my God, please.
Okay,
Please, there's somebody.
I am, honey.
Please.
Take a deep breath in
Please,
here, okay?
hurry.
Patsy.
Well, what do you guys think about that little clip that we just showed you guys?
Yeah, because it's pretty wild. And it feels like there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
As well.
And it's just so crazy.
But the thing is, it's hard to judge people on a 911 call because you're panicked. Like, nobody knows how to properly explain things when you're in distress.
There are a lot of emotions that are...
Yeah. So just to solely base, like, an accusation on a phone call, like, with the police isn't completely accurate or, like, I don't know, good to do. But it does give you a little bit of insight on how weird this shit is.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty fucking weird. Because even asking him about the handwriting on that note, he was like, well, honestly, my mom writes pretty sloppy and this doesn't look like her handwriting. You know, it's like, oh, well, that didn't necessarily, you know.
Right.
So he's
that
like,
doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, he's like dancing around it. And then in terms of his voice on the 911 call, he just simply says no, like a direct no, you know, that he didn't say that. And the same thing goes for part 3. And when Dr. Phil asked if he killed his sister, he also asked him, how does he think that people could have gotten in? So when Dr. Phil...
Into the house, right?
Right. So when Dr. Phil asked him if... But
I thought the basement window had been broken, or no?
Mm-mm.
Oh, so there was no sign of forced entry.
Mm-mm. So yeah, when he was asked about killing his sister, Burke simply said, check the evidence. Like, there or lack thereof.
Ain't none.
Yeah, and or lack thereof.
Y'all fucked it all up.
That believe that you killed your sister.
Yeah.
What do you say about that?
Look at the evidence, or the lack thereof.
Part of their rationale, these people say you are the only one that your parents would go to the lengths that they went to cover up everything that happened. They're talking about fabricating this ransom note. They're talking about if she was strangled, then causing the head injury. All of this cover-up was all done to protect you because they didn't want to lose 2 children. That's their theory.
I don't know what to say that, because I know that's not what happened. There's been a few people that said that's not even physically possible for a 9-year-old to do that. Like, you won't find any evidence because that's not what happened. I know I didn't do it.
And I know what you're talking about. I mean, they're saying the force of the blow, the actual act of the strangulation for a child that weighed 60 pounds at the time.
Yeah.
Just physically, it doesn't work.
But then again, he was a 9-year-old kid. He probably doesn't remember much.
That's true. And it says he doesn't seem... Well, the reason I found this so awkward or eerie, in my personal opinion, it says he doesn't seem to be sure with his answers throughout his interviews. He's in direct denial of his voice on the 911 call, and he made it seem like he knew more than he did, you know?
Right.
And when he was asked about killing his sister, he didn't even deny it directly. Because, you know, if you didn't do something, you'd be quick to be like, oh, well, I didn't do that, or like this and that, you know? But instead, he pointed out the lack of evidence, which is a pretty odd, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because why would you even...
Because it's not what the question is about.
Right.
So, we're going to get into possible suspects. So, the first one is Patsy Ramsey. It has been speculated that while cleaning up yet another one of JonBenét's bedwetting accidents, which are said to have occurred with some frequency prior to her passing, Ramsey flipped the switch and slammed the little girl's head against the side of a hard, blunt surface like a bathtub, hence the fractured skull at the base of her skull from blunt force trauma.
Right.
JonBenét was found with a rope around her neck, tightened by a homemade garrote,
It's scary.
determined to have been fashioned out of a paintbrush taken from Patsy's paint kit that lay nearby.
And that in its own is pretty scary. Like, to just read that. When I read that, I was like, wow.
An everyday item, probably,
Yeah.
if she paints often.
Right.
But it just seems like her murder was one out of rage.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And it seemed personal. And like you said, like, well, not like you said, but like I just said, if she really like got upset and just flipped like that because she got sick of her not learning, like, to stop bedwetting,
Right.
like, that would be out of rage. But at the same time, like, she's a kid, she's 6 years
she's 6,
old, like, of course she's still bedwetting. Like, you know,
Right.
I don't know. Like, it just, to think that if she probably did die because of that, that is so fucked up.
Yeah. The next suspect we have is John Ramsey, which is pretty popular but amongst a lot of people.
I think that's the most popular.
Yeah.
Is John and Burke.
Yeah. Ramsey made a beeline straight for the basement cellar where he immediately found his deceased child.
As if he knew that she was already
which
down there.
Which is already a problem, because why would you go straight to the basement out of all the places that you could look? You know what I mean?
And mind you, their house was huge.
Right.
They were rich.
Right.
So...
And it's like, though he'd been told to leave everything where he found it, he picked her up, carried the body upstairs, removed a piece of tape from the child's mouth, and placed her down. He even covered her up with a throw blanket, which further destroyed vital evidence.
Right. Making it more impossible to find out who did this. You would think, as the parent, you want to know who did this and why.
Right.
You wouldn't touch anything. Fuck emotions and feelings. Like,
You just
do that after.
Right.
So, the next one is Burke Ramsey. The 29-year-old software developer creepily grinned through Dr. Phil's line of questioning that ran down the chain of events leading up to the night in question. So, during his interviews, as we showed in the clip before, you could probably tell he just seemed a little on the emotionless side. Just almost dismissive of the whole situation. Like, I don't know, you know, like, leave me out of it. It's not me, but I don't know who, you know?
Like that simple shit that he said, like avoiding conflict.
Right. Like it beats me.
Right.
Who cares who did it? So, forensic investigator Werner Spitz's review of JonBenét's autopsy included a perfectly rectangular defect. What's that?
Now, in terms of the perfectly rectangular defect, I was looking into that and I didn't get like a clear answer exactly what it was. But if you read on, it just says, you know, what he thought.
Okay. He suspected that it came from a blow to JonBenét's head with a blunt, heavy flashlight seen in a photo on the kitchen counter in one of the crime scene photos. He claimed that the flashlight fit the 8.5-inch gash in her skull to perfection.
And that's a hell of a claim right there.
And what does that have to do with Burke?
Because who was in the kitchen, or who was said to be in the kitchen, because they found that bowl of pineapples, you know?
Oh.
And isn't it odd that you just find a flashlight on the kitchen counter, which, you know, he was the only one in the kitchen, supposedly at the time, you know?
Right.
So, what happened? So, the next suspect we have is the school teacher. Former school teacher John Mark Carr confessed out of the blue to the 1996 strangulation of JonBenét in graphic sexual detail. So, the now 51-year-old...
Yeah, he was obsessed with her, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was fucking... It was fucking disgusting. And the 51-year-old initially brought himself into the mess by reaching out to a University of Colorado professor named Michael Tracy over an email in regards to a documentary Tracy was making on the case. Once those emails took a disturbing turn, he revealed that he had a whole sexual fascination with JonBenét. And in his diaries, he would refer to himself as Dax or something like that. And so in one entry he wrote sort of a story referring to the crime scene and how he would play this little love game with JonBenét in which he strangled her.
That is so weird.
Yeah.
And was he anybody that used to, like, attend her?
It was said that he, like, frequented her pageants, like, all the time.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these out-of-the-house suspects, a lot of them attended her pageants, and a lot of them were creepy older men that were attracted to young girls, and...
It's just
sick
shit.
Yeah.
Sick shit.
So, the next suspect is Gary Olivia, and Excuse me. Gary was a 32-year-old known sex offender in Boulder, Colorado, when JonBenét was found strangled to death in what looked like a potential sexual assault. Given that there was a droplet of blood on her underwear. So that kind of contradicts what we said earlier, though. Did they immediately think it was a sexual assault or no?
Oh no, that wasn't immediate. That was actually once they had done all
the autopsy.
Yeah, done the autopsy and looked a little further.
Okay. So the convicted pedophile had been living in the area on and off when police allegedly found a magazine cutout of JonBenét Ramsey in his backpack after he was apprehended on drug charges in 2000. 2000. So a couple years later, and he still had that shit in his backpack.
Yeah,
that's weird.
Weird as fuck.
His longtime friend Michael Vale came forward and said that Olivia called him saying that he hurt a little girl. And when did he call him?
And this was like, I want to say that actually this was a
like,
week after that it happened.
So it was like immediately after?
Yeah, it was kind of like after it happened.
This worried Vale because Olivia used knots similar to the garrote around Benét's neck that were compared to knots that Olivia used when he attempted to strangle his mother one time.
Mm-hmm. And that says
what a
coinkydink. Yeah, that says a lot about him as well.
Oh, yeah, aggressive.
Super aggressive. Like, you tried to kill your mom
and dangerous.
And don't even know why. Like,
yeah, that is weird. Your birth giver?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, when people...
So who's to say what you would do to just a random little girl?
A random kid, you know?
That you're sexually attracted to, so you only see her as a sexual object anyway.
Right. And so there's another suspect that we have, and it's the housekeeper, which there's always something like that. And, you know, so, I mean, it was a given. So Linda Hoffman, I don't know how you say that. Is it Pooh or Puh?
Pew.
Had worked with their family as their housekeeper, and her husband Mervyn was their handyman. So it wasn't surprising that she was known to have a key or know the layout of the home.
24-hour access, really, because she had her own key.
Right.
Because she can come and go as she pleased if she really wanted to.
And the interesting thing about her being a suspect is during the investigation and during her time on the stand, she was quick to voice her suspicions of Patsy and how Patsy...
So quick to throw it on somebody else.
Quick to say how Patsy would have anger issues and would argue with JonBenét.
Yeah, there's a lot of questionable things about Patsy.
Yeah, Patsy's questionable as fuck.
She's got a lot of internal stuff going on.
And in that same token, Patsy claimed that Hoffman Pugh was struggling for money and had asked for a loan of several $1,000s, but Ramsey declined. So they're giving it a motive.
Right. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And
do you think that the ransom note could have been written to aid in that story, to direct it back off of the family?
And what makes it even more odd is the fact that they had Hoffman Pugh write out the number 118,000, and they took strands of her hair, but nothing came of it.
Right, so it wasn't a match.
Right, no.
Interesting. But I really find it interesting that because there was snow on the ground, there, along with no sign of forced entry, there was no footprints in the snow.
At all.
None. None leading into the basement, none leading into any part of the house, none walking away from the house, none. And mind you, this happened a couple of hours prior, so even if it was still currently snowing, the footprints wouldn't have been completely filled.
They wouldn't have moved.
Exactly. Exactly. They still would have been noticeable. So the fact that the snow was just a clean blanket tells a lot. You know, something happened inside the house.
No forced entry.
Exactly.
So,
at night. Night. Probably, I don't know, 2 a.m. or whatever it was.
Exactly. And even if it was John, Burke, or even Patsy, why, the ransom note is the biggest thing for me, because it's where would it come from? There's no forced entry. No one else was in the home. So how is there just a random ransom note in your home?
Exactly. And that's what makes me think that one of them wrote it.
Right. And so that puts us on to our ending questions.
Yes. And we have 3 of them today.
Yes, we do. So the first one is, who do you think actually killed JonBenét?
Honestly, the one that seems most probable to me is either Patsy or Burke.
Ooh, good answer.
And Patsy, because it seems like she had some deep rooted issues.
Yeah, no,
maybe perhaps against JonBenét. But
So,
for this to be an act of rage, it would only make sense if that's how Patsy was. But if it were Burke, I could see, because the parents were definitely trying to, well, it seems like they were definitely trying to protect the killer. And like we stated earlier, who else more would you want to protect than your only child that's left?
and also,
Even if they were the one that did it.
also in that same token, though,
Because if you give them up, you lose both of your children.
in that same token, though, it's a lot of jealousy being like thrown in the air.
Yeah,
you
he
know?
could have been jealous for
Could've
sure,
been
especially being the
from
older
both
child.
him or Patsy, you know.
Yeah, but also like for him being the oldest child and obviously not a pageant kid.
Right.
I mean, I can only imagine what that felt like.
Right.
Being
know,
him.
They're not really giving you much of attention because they're focused on, JonBenét and like her little career or whatnot, you know? But in my personal opinion, I strongly believe it could have been the housekeeper or John.
And why?
John, simply because he just made a fucking beeline. Like, he just knew exactly where to go. Like, he just ran down
But
there.
that plays into it could have been Burke, because if Burke was
Also
scared
could've been
and
Burke.
told them like,
Yeah.
I hurt my sister, like
That could've
easily
been.
could have been like,
Could've
okay,
been.
where is she? Oh,
Could've
well,
been.
she's in the
Also-
basement. Now he knows.
Also, think about it. If it's just a lot, but I'll just really throw it on John because of the simple fact. Not only did he know where, he just was so quick to just move her.
So quick to move her.
Yeah.
Also so quick to contaminate the scene.
Right, just to mess up
And
everything.
you just know that you're not supposed to do that.
And the reason I said that housekeeper because there's a simple motive there, like
Money.
Yeah, there's a simple motive there.
But also, like, if that were the case, she wouldn't be dead. That would ruin the motive.
I mean, it would. It definitely.
What money
would.
are you gonna get if she's already dead?
Definitely would.
If
ruin
this
the
was
motive.
a disappearance, if she was kidnapped, yes, it would make sense. But the fact that there was a ransom note, but yet she's gone,
Yeah, that does kind of.
what's the point in the
That's
ransom
kinda fucked
note?
up.
Other
But I
than
guess-
to deter, the police. Because
Right.
think about it. Yeah, Patsy probably brought up, well, Patsy was the one to bring up
Yeah.
that the house cleaning lady, she was specifically asking for money.
Right.
And asked for this specific amount.
Right.
And what do you know? The
It's
note
just-
asked for
it's
money
just so
and the
crazy
specific
how it's
amount,
just so
and Patsy,
specific.
yes, and Patsy was able to pinpoint. Well, this person was asking for it, maybe to take the blame off of her or her son.
Right. Could have been. I mean, hey,
So we need to be police officers. We
I'm
be
into it.
we be
I'll be
Inspector
definitely down for
Gadget.
some forensic stuff.
Hell yeah.
'Cause-
So the second question is, do you believe the family knows who was responsible? And this bleeds into the first question for me.
Yeah.
Because if it was Burke, yes. If it was Patsy, yeah. Burke might not have known, but John sure in the hell did.
Right.
Either way it goes.
Right. Somebody knew something.
Yeah.
Out of those three people, somebody knows something,
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
Yeah, no, I definitely believe they know. Because, like,
How
look
could you
at
not?
look at the interviews, look at everybody's body language. It's,
How could you
it's
not?
too much. And, of course, the last question is, did the police do their job to their best ability? And we all know the answer to that.
Never. Not never, but no. And it's not really that surprising because it happens more often than not.
Yeah, in a lot of different
Unfortunately.
cases, yeah.
And as we continue through this FNC series, you guys will see police work just stay
Fail.
shitty. And it gets shittier because some things that police departments do is just mind-boggling because this is your guys' sole... Like, this is your job. Like,
One job, Harry, one
well,
job.
I mean, they got more than one
Well,
job.
the main job.
But I don't know. It's just there's just too many questions with this case, and almost too many answers.
Yeah, in the same sense. There's a lot of
Yeah.
questions, a lot of answers. And a lot of answers that lead to nothing, a lot of answers that lead to something. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's just so crazy to me. But do you have any other questions or any last words?
In terms of, that's kind of scary. Last words.
Sorry.
Nah. In terms of like things to say at the end, I just want to say, keep your people safe. Like, if you got kids, watch out for them. Because people are weird. Pay attention to those people that are extra nice to you, your family, your kids. People that you care about. Because people do some strange shit.
Not everything that glitters is gold.
Straight up, people do some strange shit out here. Mm-hmm. So be aware and be safe. Mm-hmm. And with that being said,
wait. Also, you guys should be just as excited as we are because next week we will be dropping a really exciting episode, and it's gonna be the story of Stan Romanek. And it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be good, and it's gonna be long. So it's gonna be an alien encounters video, and we're really excited about it.
Always excited for aliens, man. They're
oh
real
yeah,
anyway.
this is our first ever alien video that we're gonna drop. So, so stay tuned and get excited. Also, we've really been loving the feedback.
Oh yeah, y'all keep that up. That's been great.
The love that we have been getting is like so great. Cool. And we've been talking and thinking about putting some things in the works because we want to be able to, I don't know, like acknowledge you guys for being definitely. So supportive because it's like genuine support.
It really means a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know, like we just feel like it's only right. So keep your eye out for that or your ear out for that. We'll have some new and exciting things coming.
Definitely, guys. Definitely.
Yes.
And with that being said, my friends, stay light, stay bright, and stay positive. I've been your host, DJ.
And I've been your host, Sav.
Catch us next week on another episode of
Deeper Than Most.